Welcome to the Musician's Musician. I am your host, Nick Costa, and today we have a really fun chat with my pal, Drew Shuck. Drew is the leader of the fantastic emo pop punk project Bug Heaven, and some of my fellow Skyward Sword fans are stoked about that band name, I'm sure. Drew and I go way back to his days in Omaha. He's Philly-based now. But Omaha was one of, if not the first place I ever played outside of the Twin Cities. I loved going back there because the people were so kind and the music scene was incredible. Also, at the time, they had a Sonic and we did not have a Sonic. And that was the coolest thing that we could ever think of. We ate it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was not very good, but we did do that. So Omaha had a very special place in our hearts. There seems to be like a never-ending stream of talented folks from Omaha too, and one of them was my pal Drew. Drew played drums in a number of fantastic groups over the years, one of them being a group called Bear Stories that we got to share the stage with a few times. So when Drew told me that he was starting a band that he was fronting, he sent me a few tunes from what would end up being his EP, Together We Live in Hell, and I loved it. It felt so fresh, but still so nostalgic. It reminded me of the feeling that I had when I listened to Bleed American by Jimmy Eat World for the first time. They don't sound exactly the same sonically or anything, but he has such a fresh approach to a genre that is really easy to fall into cliches. With his writing, he misses those cliches and he makes something really unique and exciting. Drew wanted to talk about the wonderful music of Kenny Vasoli, who you may know from The Starting Line. His music is something that I've always really adored. Drew specifically wanted to focus on Kenny's project Personnel. We veered out of that quite a bit. We talked about The Starting Line. We talked about Vacationer, which is his more recent project, which is incredible. We talked all about that quite a bit. We also talked a lot about pop punk in general in this one, which is frankly something I can pull a conversation out of from deep within my soul. Drew and I seem to have that in common. So with all of that, let's get into
it. Sick.
Cool. Well, I am here with Drew Shuck of Bug Heaven. Drew, thank you for being a musician's musician. We are going to get into the wonderful music and the many projects of Mr. Kenny Vasoli, Philadelphia's own. But before we get into that, I kind of know the answer to this, but what's new with Bug Heaven?
Some and not much at the same time. So, we're getting ever closer to recording and releasing some stuff. I think we've got one more song to mix and one more song that needs another round of mixing. Ian's working on those right now. So, I got to get it mastered after that and then figure out what we're going to do for releasing it. So
cool.
We'll see how soon that all gets figured out, but I think it's going to end up being 8 songs now. Cool. So, yep.
Sick. I had the privilege of getting to play on one, so I've gotten a bit of a sneak preview, and I
had the privilege of you playing on one, and it sounds great. So
I'm very, very thrilled about how everything is sounding, and I think it's going to be a really great thing. I can't wait to hear it all put together as a one cohesive piece.
We'll see how that goes, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and you did a move from Omaha to Philadelphia, in case folks don't know.
In October.
Yeah, how's it been?
Good. Yeah, that's been the other slow going, just kind of getting some new people together to keep playing in the band. It'll still be same projects, but just finding some new musicians to play with out here. So I think I've got a drummer and a guitar player figured out. Still looking for a bass player, but got a couple people sort of interested. So
cool.
Hopefully we'll start doing some shows sometime in the next couple months. But yeah,
awesome. Yeah, that's rad. And you know what? If you don't have a bass player, there's plenty of bands that don't have bass players, right?
Yeah.
It's just bass.
Least important instrument.
Totally.
Statistically.
That's right.
Yeah.
No,
That's not me who said that. That's just facts.
yeah. That's
I love
science.
bass players. Yeah.
Yeah. No, some of my best friends are bass players.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Some of my favorite people play unimportant instruments.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So.
I love the bass, and I'm joking. I hope everyone knows that.
Yeah. Just for clarification, it's a very important instrument. But speaking of bass players, Kenny Vasoli.
Yeah.
Is an incredible bass player.
Yeah. I remember, and an incredible guitar player.
Yeah. Yeah. Unreal.
I remember the first time I saw him play with Personnel, I went expecting him to be on bass. And then at that time, I didn't realize that he had written like a lot of the, if not most of the guitars for like the Starting Line stuff also.
Right.
And so I remember going to that show just expecting him to be playing bass again. And then I was just like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Especially,
yeah, that was cool.
That Personnel stuff. Well, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. But with the Personnel stuff, I hadn't really listened to that stuff much. So
yeah,
you specifically, and we'll kind of talk about the album that you picked, but you kind of picked Personnel as a focus point here. And I was a little bit surprised because I am a big fan of Vacationer, and I'm a big fan of Starting Line, obviously.
Yeah.
But Personnel was a bit of a blind spot. I remember that their first record, Initial, and hearing it and being like, okay, yeah, cool. Kenny discovered riffs and just kind of be like, I feel like there was a point in like 2007 to 2010 where like those bands that were like Drive Thru Records, pop punk bands or like that style.
They all bought a Big Muff.
They either all like bought a Big Muff and discovered like Black Sabbath, or like they finally got into Radiohead and like went that route. Cause like there's like bands like Copeland and stuff like that, like got very Radioheady, and then you have Personnel where that first record is just like riffs. Yeah. But
just because you brought up Copeland, I'm just going to tell one of the couple of Personnel stories that I have. But the second time I saw them, I went and saw, it was Copeland headlining with I Can Make a Mess Like Nobody's Business, Ace from Early November's other band, Personnel, and then the band Lydia.
Yeah.
Was the opener. So super stellar lineup. It was the first time I ever ate an edible. Can I talk about those on here?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Oh yeah, you live in California. We can talk about that all we want.
It's legal, man.
But they were like homemade, like,
the most dangerous
This was many years ago. Yeah, they were very homemade. And I just remember like partway through Lydia's set, I was just like mind blown by the light show, as if I had like never seen lights at a concert before. And I was like, oh, that's the weed. Now I know.
Oh, that's kicking in.
But yeah, and then I remember Personnel coming on and Kenny being on stage, and I remember just kind of like looking at him at one point, and I was like, I think he's as stoned as I am.
Honestly, it seems likely.
Yeah, and then from watching the I think they talked about it in the Starting Line documentary, maybe, or whatever, or I just like have gathered it over the years. But he was like kind of one of the first musicians also who was kind of like more like vocal about like weed and like legalization ish, maybe, or at least about like the benefits that he got from it, I guess, and was kind of like famously a stoner, at least for like our generation, where a lot of like those Warped Tour bands were either like straight edge or like solid state like Christian bands, and just kind of either didn't do it or didn't talk about it very much. And I remember he was kind of one of the earlier ones that was kind of like, I love being a stoner. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. A lot of like his social media content for Vacationer is just very weed related. I think even like, I think there's even like Vacationer, like dugouts and grinders and like stuff like that too. Yeah. So he's very into the cannabis, it seems.
Yeah, one of the few other like interviews I did for like the Bug Heaven project was like a Q&A thing about weed and music, and the Personnel record was also one of the ones I brought up for that.
Sure.
So
I mean, it's a great high record. And the record,
right? And I think that's part of the reason I got so into it, other than really enjoying it, was that I heard it right around the time that I like first started like smoking weed and like living in a house with people that also smoked weed and would just sit around and listen to records. And so that one just really like grabbed me, and I was like, oh, I love this. I'm going to listen to this on repeat for like days.
Right. So, and to clarify, because we haven't actually said which record it is yet. It's the Positives.
Yeah, the Positives.
Specifically that record by Personnel. Which I thought I had listened to, but when you brought it up, I popped it on and I was like, I don't think I know. The only song that I knew was Goodness Gracious.
Nice.
And it's
that's
like
a sick one.
It's a riff. It's like a riff song, but like that riff is nuts. It's so good. But like that record, it kind of goes from like the first song is almost like an Explosions in the Sky song, but with lyrics. And then there's like there's like that riff stuff. There's like some Radiohead stuff. They have like some stuff that's like classic early Beatles every now and then too. It's just really all over the place, but it feels so cohesive.
Right.
It's awesome. I do usually ask as well. We got ahead of ourselves a little bit at this point, but I do always kind of want to know. I would imagine that the answer to this would be like somewhere from the Starting Lines catalog, but do you remember the first time that you heard any of Kenny's music?
Probably not the first time. I feel like the Starting Line was kind of Say It Like You Mean It was like in rotation for me, like around the same time as like all of like I was diving into like all of the Drive Thru stuff. But I never really followed them through, unfortunately, their other two full lengths until I went and saw them on their first like farewell tour.
Sure.
And then that was when I went to that with a couple buddies, and one of them was my friend Tristan, who I think you might know or remember, who played in Bear Stories with me back in the day.
Sure. Yeah.
And so he went with me to that, and him and Nick V were like both super into the Starting Line, and we're like, oh, you haven't heard these other two records? Like, you got to listen to these. And then I got super deep into them.
Yeah.
And again, I think another reason I was so like gravitated towards the Personnel stuff, because I was just like, oh, like I just got into this band finally, these like later records, and now he's got this new band that's kind of following that same path of like getting a little bit weirder. And so I just kind of pretty quickly was going through like all of that stuff in the span of like a couple years instead of, as it was coming out. So
for sure.
But yeah, I definitely do remember Say It Like You Mean It, listening to that a whole lot. Especially like when I was in like late middle and through high school, I like mowed lawns a lot as like a summer job. And so I would just like put on my CDs and listen to those. And I had a copy of Say It Like You Mean It. I think I actually bought that one because I remember what the disc looked like, but or somebody gave it to me. But,
sure.
But yeah, and so I remember always really, really liking that record, but just didn't really follow them after that until a little bit later on. But yeah. Totally.
Yeah. I had like a moment where when I started really getting into music in general, it was kind of the punk rock, pop punk thing, and Drive Thru Records was like this beacon, like there was all the major label bands, there was Blink-182, blah, blah, blah. But I remember the first like kind of bridge to that was Phoenix TX, because Blink-182 was hyping up Phoenix TX so hard. And then they were on Drive Thru for their first record. And so I was like, okay, what other bands are on this Drive Thru Records thing? And it was Newfound Glory. And I remember I got like a Newfound Glory sampler CD that had like 4 songs on it. And one of them was like the advance of Hit or Miss. And on the back of that sampler, I still have it somewhere even. on the back of that sampler was like other releases by Drive Thru Records, and there was just a picture of With Hopes of Starting Over, their like the first Starting Line EP.
Yep. And okay, that was the other thing I was trying to remember, because I think it's hard to remember for sure, but I'm pretty sure there was 1 or 2 songs off of that EP were on back when mp3.com used to have like you could download 2 free songs from a lot of bands. I think I downloaded like 1 or 2 Starting Line songs. The ones that really stuck with me from that time were, I remember downloading a couple of Story of the Year songs.
Oh yeah, there we go.
I think it was Anthem of Our Dying Day and whatever the big one was, Until the Day I Die.
Until the Day I Die.
And then, actually, I remember a couple others. There was Coheed and Cambria.
Sure.
Delirium Trigger, which might still be my favorite Coheed song, I think, just because of that like initial connection. And then Devil in Jersey City, maybe.
Classic.
One of the other ones off that record. Yeah. Sure. And then Dead on Arrival by Fall Out Boy was another one that like I downloaded that and I was like, dang, this band rules. And so, yeah. Oh, and then that was also how I first started to kind of discover like a little bit heavier, like screamier music. Because I remember I downloaded a couple of songs off the first Alexis on Fire record. Sure. And then a couple of songs off the first Fear Before the March of Flames record. And that was kind of the first, like when I first heard them, I was kind of even just like, I don't really know about this, but still like threw it on some burned CDs. And then after listening to it enough times, I was just like, I think I maybe even like set them aside until I eventually found the first Glassjaw full length. And I think that was the first one that I finally was like, oh, I like this enough that even though they're like screaming a bunch, I gotta like keep listening to this. But
Glassjaw was so weird to me. That was the hardest band for me to get into. But when it clicked, I was like, oh, these guys are fucking geniuses.
Yeah.
Like, this is brilliant. I think for me, the first time I got into like anything with screaming, I was so into pop punk.
Yeah.
And like, or just like even like melodic punk. Like I was really into Notes for a Name and stuff. And I remember I would go to my grandma's. Hard Rock Bottom.
I love that album.
Just incredible. That and Live in a Dive I had like on.
I was just going to say, you were the one who finally got me to listen to Live in a Dive too. And that's the one I always go back to if I'm not listening to Hard Rock Bottom. But
I can't even listen to like the studio versions of those songs anymore because I know what they sound like on Live in a Dive. And I'm like, it's so much better.
Yeah.
But
was Hard Rock Bottom also on Drive Thru?
No, that's Fat Wreck.
That's right. Okay. Yep.
You're
right.
They were a Fat Wreck band, and I love Fat Wreck bands too. So like, I was really into like, No Effects and Mad Caddies and stuff like that too. But and like Pennywise, and so like there was like some heavier stuff, but I wasn't really into screaming until I was at my grandma's house because I would go there for the summers. And she would let me watch MTV2 just like all night and all day. So I was watching MTV2 and Box Full of Sharp Objects came on by The Used.
Okay, you're right. That might have actually been my first one, but I don't always think of it because that record isn't like as much that, I guess. But that particular song, it was probably the heaviest song I listened to up to that point.
That song is by far, it's not, I don't know. There's some really heavy moments on that album. And like,
I think...
It's
I think it's the other screamier songs I think I couldn't find on Kazaa.
Yes.
I think I only had 7 of the 10 songs when I had that record originally. Sure. So that might be skewing my perspective on it a bit, but
And that record's like a John Feldman production, which I think it's the only record that's a John Feldman production that doesn't sound like it's a bunch of robots. Like it sounds like he actually just like recorded a band well.
Yep.
And I don't know, maybe that's a hot take. I don't think it's a hot take, but like,
I don't think that's that hot of a take. I don't know. Let me look up John Feldman's production credits and we'll see.
I mean, it's like, I could tell you a bunch right now. It's Story of the Year. It's Messed. It's Blink-182. It's Machine Gun Kelly.
Good Charlotte.
Yeah,
it's all that.
He did that one with Lifestyles and the Rich and the Famous, which that record actually sounds all right too. Yeah. Which I also think that's probably about the same time as that Used record.
Okay, one more segue before we actually talk about Ken Vasoli for a little bit.
Yeah.
Since that's what we're doing. But that Good Charlotte record, The Young and the Hopeless, when that came out, there was like a review of it in this like Christian magazine that my parents used to like buy for me. That was supposed to be like a like edgier like Christian youth magazine. And they just like railed against it for like being like anti-Christian and like all these things. And I was like so into that record at the time. I like found their email on my parents' like old computer in the like office computer room. And I like wrote them like an essay song by song about like why they were wrong about it. And my mom like found it in the sent messages and she was like, "You're such a good writer." And I was like, "That's so funny, dude."
That's such like a nice supportive way to like, I was expecting that to go a totally different way. And your mom's just being like, "That's such a good, that was such a good job that you did."
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've definitely done things that my parents were upset about on the internet too when I was a kid. But that one, my mom was like, "You made some really good points. You're a good writer."
Hell yeah. Well, that rules. Yeah. And all for Good Charlotte, which I love that. I love that for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then by the time I saw them like later that year with my first big concert was Newfound Glory, Good Charlotte, MXPX, and Stretch Armstrong.
Wow.
The like Honda Civic tour.
Sure.
And so that one, by the time I like got to that show, I like already was like over Good Charlotte. I was like, I'm sick of these posers. The other three bands are way better. I remember I went and bought like a giant Mountain Dew during their set at the venue and chugged it before Newfound Glory.
Yeah. They were that band that was like, you know, I don't know why like they got a pass, but Blink didn't, but like, yeah, they were the poser band, you know?
Yeah.
You're just going to PacSun or, you know, and like, you don't actually like this kind of music.
Yeah. Right.
Like, them and Simple Plan were like the two that was like not cool to like. But
Simple Plan was how I found like all of this pretty much. The like liner notes of their first record was the first CD I ever owned, where like people were like, where they like thanked every band they had ever like liked or played with.
Yes.
And that was how I found for sure Newfound Glory and Saves the Day. I remember those two specifically.
Wow.
But there was like a bunch of, I think maybe even AFI was in there.
Probably. That's around the time.
But yeah, it was like a lot of, So yeah, liner notes for CDs was, you know,
God,
the algorithm back in the day,
which is how I discovered the Starting Line, which is kind of what we were talking about, right? Like you comb through the liner notes, then you find a band or you find like a album artwork or something like that was like in the flyer for the label that they put in the CDs. And you're like, that's probably something I'm going to like. I'm just going to buy it. Cause you can't really sample it at that point in time.
Right.
And yeah, that first Starting Line EP, I remember hearing Leaving and being like, I'm going to like this band. Like this band is going to be good. And then I didn't get into Say It Like You Mean It, honestly, until like within the last like 10 years.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, oh, this is like, I revisited it and I was like, oh, this is better than like most of the bands on Drive Thru. Like this is incredible. But I was really into that second record of theirs.
Based on a True Story. Yeah.
And Direction. Like those two records, I was like, hell yeah, there we go. But yeah, they don't really have a stinker as far as the Starting Line goes.
Yeah, the other one too was the Make Yourself at Home, the acoustic EP that they did. I got really into that one in high school also, and then kind of forgot about it completely until I was going back to their discography. And I remember like pulling that up and putting it on and being like, oh, I know the words to like every one of these songs, even though I don't remember like when I had it or why. I think the actual song Make Yourself at Home, I had just kind of like forgotten was a Starting Line song, but I just like loved it. It's like one of my favorite songs to this day. But yeah,
deeply embedded, but you don't know what like the source of it.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, that's also the Starting Line. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, Kenny writes such good. He's a really good melody writer.
Yeah.
It's kind of unreal. And he can write like a good melody over anything.
Especially he was like 15 and 16 when they wrote those like first two records.
Yeah.
It's like,
and they're incredible.
Maddening, but incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. They're so good. And like, I mean, truly better than like, you know, the older the older people on Drive Thru Records. I don't want to say adults because I think maybe the oldest person on Drive Thru was like 22. But
yeah, right.
At that time.
Yeah.
Which now we know is intentional.
Yeah, 25-year-olds would have known to sign better record deals. So,
well, you know, yeah, probably. Probably. Yeah, man. And yeah, now we know it's like very predatory in like multiple ways. But
yeah, right.
But like, goddamn, what a roster on Drive Thru.
Yep.
And then we can kind of segue into personnel because
first best band on Drive Thru Records.
For me?
Yeah.
I mean,
you go first, then I'll go.
Yeah.
Or we can count to 3 and both say it.
For the sake of content, let's do that, but then we'll elaborate.
All right,
okay.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, Newfound Glory.
Midtown.
Oh,
wow.
Midtown. Midtown. See, Midtown's great. Living Well is such a good record.
Yeah.
Also kind of like in that genre. Should have been bigger, I think. Mm-hmm. But I was really big on Forget What You Know.
Yeah, their major label one.
And that wasn't Drive Thru, so I don't feel like that counts.
Yeah, but I feel like Geffen counts because that's where everybody
that's true
had to put their record out after Drive Thru.
Collapsed, yeah.
So yeah. Well, I mean, that was their upsell thing all along, like the whole time. So that was what Direction was on. That was what Catalyst was on, I think, for NFG.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That was their like distribution deal, was that like they would distribute through Geffen and then Geffen would get whatever bands they wanted to put out their major label ones. But
yeah, I might be wrong, but I think they had a more amicable relationship similar to that with MCA Records.
Maybe, yeah.
And then MCA got swallowed up by Geffen, and Geffen was just like, I guess we'll honor this, and they didn't give a shit.
Yeah, I think you're right, yeah.
Because the Newfound Glory did have to do that for Sticks and Stones. I think it was like a Drive Thru Records.
Oh yeah,
MCA
it was
records.
like a MCA one, yeah.
Yeah, it was both. And then Geffen came over and was like, yeah, Drive Thru, you can't have anything. It's just us. And we're not going to do anything for this.
Right. Yeah.
And then all those bands collapsed. So like it just really, it killed that genre for a little bit.
For a little bit, yeah. Till 2014. So however many years that was.
Yeah, for like a long time. But yeah, I mean, now I kind of want to look up the Drive Thru roster and just be frustrated with my decision. But I'm just thinking like, as far as like influence goes and like importance for that genre.
Yeah.
Newfound Glory is kind of, I mean, they're kind of up there.
Yeah.
I feel good about that choice now that I'm looking at it. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Something Corporate.
I love them, but I would not make a case for them being the best by any means.
I like that album North a lot.
Yeah, me too. That's probably my favorite one.
Yeah. Also, fun fact, Steel Train. So that was, what's his face?
Jack Antonoff.
Jack Antonoff.
They opened that last Starting Line tour that I went to.
Really? Steel Train?
Yep.
They like got back together?
No. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
The original final tour, not the last show.
Got it. Okay, that makes more. I was like, how did I not know about this?
Yeah. No, I don't know if there would be a reason for that at this point. But
yeah, I don't think he needs to like bank on the nostalgia thing.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he would go with Fun before he went with Steel Train.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Funny story about Fun, by the way. Long time ago, this is like a quick side note, and I swear we'll get back into Kenny Vasoli. Long time ago, I was opening, like there was a band called Miniature Tigers who would, when they would come to town, they would always,
remember them.
Yeah. They would always ask my old band to open for them. So we would get to open these like crazy shows. And one of the shows was Miniature Tigers and Fun at the Triple Rock, and
nice.
It was already sold out. So like, why RIP for sure. It was already sold out. So like, why do they need a support act? But like, okay. So we get there and Me and our guitar player at the time were in the back of the Triple Rock, and Fun pulls up, and they're trying to back their trailer up to the back door, and they can't do it. And they're doing it for like 15 minutes, and we're just smoking and just watching this happen. And we're just dying laughing. We're not offering to help. We're just laughing at them. And then, like, you know, Jack gets out of the van. He was driving, and he was just like, oh, no. It was Nate was driving. Mm-hmm. He gets out of the van and he just goes, fuck it. And it's just like the van is just in the middle of the parking lot, like just totally blocking everything. And he just like storms past us. He doesn't say a word. And then Jack gets in the driver's seat, backs it up to where we are, like does it first try. And then he comes out and he's just like, hey guys. And we just lost it. We just could not hang. And then they wouldn't let us in the green room for the rest of the night.
Yeah. Harsh, but fair.
It was harsh. Like at the time I was like, what jerks? And I was just like, I don't know. We could have helped. We could have done something there.
Yeah.
We were not being very supportive. But anyway, I digress. Let's talk about personnel.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of the next step, right? We had starting line. Then he goes into personnel for a little while. Why did you pick this record out of all of those?
I think it's still my favorite one that he's done.
Out of everything?
I feel like it's it'd be impossible to choose between this record or Based on a True Story or Direction. I think. Okay. I think those three are like on the same level for me. But I think, like you said, like when you went to listen to it, thinking you'd listen to it and then realizing that you'd heard like one song before, you know, like I think it's just a record that is like very good, but just got a little bit lost in his career because, you know, I think they toured more off the first EP. They didn't stay a band for much longer after this record came out.
Yeah.
He was already doing the Vacationer stuff. I think the first Vacationer record, or maybe even the second alongside this one, or like pretty close together. Yeah. I'm almost positive Vacationer was a band like while, Personnel was still going.
Yeah. So their first record was 2012. And
okay, so maybe it was just right back to back. It was just back to back. It was 2010.
In your defense, the last Personnel release is 2012, and it's the split with Weatherbox.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. You're totally right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I really like Vacationer a lot too. I have gotten more into them as a band. Like they're a band where I'll like put on a record and like play it all the way through like once a year or so.
Sure.
And it's not something I like really like throw on repeat. I don't know if I could like sing you very many of the songs.
Oh man, I sure could.
But what's the one? Is it Mindset that has like the yellow cover with like the head on it? Yeah. The Mindset album I know pretty well. I listened to that one quite a bit when it came out.
Yeah, isn't that? I think that one is instrumental, right? Or am I thinking of Wavelengths?
No, that's Wavelengths is the instrumental one, I think.
Yeah. Also good. Like all of them are really good. Oh yeah, Mindset. For sure. Mindset is rad. I really loved Gone when it came out. I still love it. It's like such a good like summer record. Like Good As New, I think is just I think that's one of the best songs he's written.
I'll have to go back to that one.
Oh,
because I think I was not as into Vacationer as I was Personnel. And so I think at first I was a little like averse to listening to it too much because I was like upset that he had quit a band I liked the most to start the band that I didn't like the most. But
yeah, I mean, it's a very different vibe. It's like very electronic, poppy.
Enjoy it very separately and also almost as much, I'd say, in some ways. But yeah.
It's a really interesting growth for his writing. Because it's not really something that I was expecting. Yeah. I think it was Good As New came on I don't even know how I got a hold of that song or why I was listening to it, but it came on somewhere where I was, and I was just like, wait a minute. Is that Kenny Vasoli singing?
Yeah.
And then like I looked it up and I was like, holy shit. He has like a whole new band, a new album, and I had no idea about it. And I got it and was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. But yeah, it is also just like the most stonery music.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's so good though. Yeah.
It's great. It's incredible. Well, I mean, positive connotation. There's good stoner music, and then there's like
right. Yeah.
There's stoner music, and then there's stoner music.
Yeah, I meant that as a continuation, not as like an excuse. Like I wasn't like, but it's good. No.
Right. Yeah. It's not like, cargo short hip, or like, cargo short stoner music. It's like blacklight stoner music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, so just going off of that, so we have Personnel.
Mm-hmm.
You saw them a whole bunch. And
I got to see them twice, which is like not a ton, but for how long they were together and the fact that shows like that really didn't come through Omaha very often, I was really lucky that I did get to see them twice. And that the first time, especially the Copeland show was incredible just because the lineup was so good.
Oh man.
But that first time I saw them was probably like one of the better shows I ever saw. It was Good Old War was opening. And then, which we just talked about recently because Days Away opened one of the two starting line shows.
Which
so
I adore
connected.
Days Away. I adore Days Away. They're one of my favorites.
Yep. But so Good Old War opened, Personnel played second, and then it was when Anthony Green was touring his first solo record and Good Old War was his band.
Yeah.
So it was like they played, Personnel played, and then they came back on with Anthony and did his set.
Yep.
And everybody was just fantastic. And it was just such a stellar show.
That show also came to the...
I still don't know if I've ever heard anybody do harmonies as good as Good Old War does live. Like, they're just unreal. Absurd.
They're so good, man. Like, their voices all sound incredible, and they were a 3-piece, I think, for that tour.
Mm-hmm.
And like, just unreal.
Yeah.
And I'll never,
it was wild.
I'll never forget hearing that first Good Old War record, because I was like listening to it begrudgingly, because I was just like, I don't want a folk record from Days Away.
Yeah.
I want Days Away. And then I listened to it and I was like, God damn it, it's really good. It's like Simon and Garfunkel, but new and exciting. Yeah, I love that record. But they did kind of all, I mean, I guess those are all Philly bands, huh?
Yep.
Wild.
Philadelphia.
Never.
Go Birds.
Go Birds. And also, congratulations to the Birds for winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
We're going to wait for the sirens to go by here. Oh, they're done.
Oh, yeah. Were those yours or mine? I don't even know.
Those are yours.
Yeah.
Yep.
I live right by a fire station, so I'm used to it now. Sure.
In LA, we have either... Because we live off of kind of a busier road. We'll get police sirens all day, ambulances, or so many helicopters. Many police helicopters just every day.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things is to look at them and just shake my fist at them and say, "You're a waste of resources."
Yeah.
I stand by it. Okay.
Agreed.
So all of this being said, I think we kind of touched on it, but like, of all of Kenny Vasoli's projects, if you had to pick one record that is like the one, like you have to, like, that's the one record that you get to listen to. Everything else goes away. Which one would you pick? Would it be this Personnel record?
Ooh.
Would it be the Positives, or would you go with something else?
That's so hard.
We ask the hard questions here on the Musician's Musician podcast.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think if I couldn't listen to any of the other ones ever again, I would have to pick Direction.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know if I could survive life if I couldn't listen to Something Left to Give on like certain really bad days.
That song, man.
It just like makes me feel better in a special, and it's like, and it's funny too because Untitled off of this record, I think is like another one of those songs for me where it's just like, sometimes I just am in the right kind of bad day that I like need to listen to it to just like feel a little bit better.
Sure.
But yeah, there's just something about Something Left to Give that's just so uniquely hopeful, both in the lyrics and the way that it like sounds, that I just like, I don't know if I could go the rest of my life without being able to hear that song again.
Well, that seems like a pretty worthy cause, or a pretty good reason to keep that record around for sure.
And then equal feelings, but less sentimental about, like, I don't think I could not listen to the opening of Are You Alone ever again.
Man.
Or like, I don't think I could sit down behind a drum set and not have to play either that or The Giver by Small Towns, like at least once.
The Giver by Small Towns, man. You saw that that's getting
I did.
vinyl.
I had to bring it up because they're repressing it, and I've been thinking about it a bunch lately. But that's like stayed in rotation as like a song I put on like 90% of the time that I sit down at a drum set just to play. So so good.
That Small Towns Burn a Little Slower record is. I was actually saying it the other day. I think probably like the most underrated for that time and that genre. Like how that record still sounds good. It still sounds incredible. Those songs still hold up. How was that not like the biggest record of that year?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
I think that one, in my brain, that one and the final Hidden in Plain View record are kind of like almost like sibling records in my mind, where it, like they both came out at a time where like for both of those bands, the songwriting was like peak. They had like some minor, like I know that both of those bands weren't super happy with how the production turned out in certain ways with those records. And I think that might've been part of it, but the songs were so like there and the melodies were there and the records were just great and they just like didn't land for whatever reason. And
are you talking about Resolution or have you?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I listened to that one.
Yeah, it's great. The first track on it, I think that's another reason I associate them, because like the first track is arguably like stronger than the rest of the record, even though the rest of the record is still really good.
Sure.
It's just like The Giver and what's that song called? Whatever the first track on Resolution is.
Bendy?
There we go. Yep.
Oh, I have heard that.
Yeah, that song rules.
Oh, that song is good. I'm like looking at the track list now being like, wait, I've heard this.
Yeah.
Wild. Okay.
But yeah, great albums, great bands.
Absolutely.
Hidden in Plain View, Drive Thru Records.
It's another Drive Thru Records band. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Small Towns is Triple Crown, which also...
Unfortunately.
Yeah, but they also, like, it's another label that had bands that weren't treated very well, that also, but like a hell of a roster.
Yeah.
As Tall as Lions, Receiving End of Sirens, Small Towns. You got there was a Brand New.
If you forget the best one, I'm gonna come through your computer and punch you in the face.
North Star.
There we go.
North Star. That's right.
I was like, you can't not say Pollyanna, Nick. Come on.
Oh man. Talk about being one of the best in the genre too.
Yeah.
That record is flawless.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to Pollyanna today.
I might too, actually.
Just like, I feel
like that's what we take away from like 60% of our conversations is I'm going to go listen to Pollyanna now.
It's true though. It does come up eventually at some point.
Yeah.
God, I love that record. And I remember hearing that in like my probably senior year of high school and just being like, okay, well, this is my identity now. Like this is what I do now. And I think I got that comparison pretty consistently for the rest of my life.
Nice. Yeah.
Like that guy's voice and
not
my
a bad
voice,
one.
I guess people always are just like, if they're familiar, they're like, your voice kind of sounds like the guy from North Star, the guy from Casino. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah. Thanks for the compliment.
It's a huge compliment. I'll take it any day. Yeah. But yeah, cool. Well, I don't go ahead.
Anyways, just to actually talk about the Personnel record for just a couple minutes before we wrap.
Yeah.
But I think I like partly answered, but maybe not fully answered. Like the reason I really picked this one was just because like I mean those last two Starting Line records were so underappreciated as far as like I think they should have been a much bigger band at that point. And I remember I'm going to go off on a tangent again, but the Personnel record is very like, I just think it's one of his very best that not a lot of people even really know exists unless they were really like following them around that time. Like I think you could probably find quite a few, like even people just like around our age that are like Starting Line fans that have probably like wandered into Vacation or at some point and been like, oh, this band is also really good. But I think unless you were really kind of following that scene or that like trajectory of his career at that point, I don't know that like a whole lot of people really like remember this record, and it's just one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that you brought this up because I didn't listen to it. Like I think I heard, like I said, I listened to that one song and was like, okay, like I get it. They're still doing the riff thing. I don't need to really look into this much further.
Right.
But like I was so wrong in that, and I'm so glad that I listened to it because so much of the album is just, I don't know. It's really incredible. And it's so diverse and so well done and so masterfully crafted. So, I don't know. It was a great choice, and thank you for picking it so I could listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool.
Go ahead. And then I guess the final thing I wanted to touch on too was that just one of the reasons that I picked Kenny Vasoli in the first place too is just because I went to those holiday shows that they did at TLA this year. And so finally got to see the Starting Line again for the first time since the first farewell tour or whatever. And it just always strikes me how much, like, no matter what band that I see him play in, or like, he's just always is the most genuinely, like, he has fun playing music more than anyone I've probably ever seen in my life. And he just like oozes that energy the entire time that he's on stage of just like happiness and gratitude and just like generally being so excited to be on stage playing music for people. And it's like something I remember them even like talking about on the like Starting Line DVD that they put out, like as they were kind of breaking up, like, and it's just like, he really is just like this person that seems to just genuinely love music more than anything else in the world. And you can just like feel it when he's on stage. And it's just one of my favorite people to watch perform that I've ever seen in my life. So
absolutely. No, he's such a presence and just a hell of a songwriter and frankly, very underappreciated. So I think it's great that we can chat about him and and lift up his music because it's really fucking good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Drew. It's been so fun. And thanks again for being a musician's musician. Yeah. Always good to talk to you, Nick. Always good. Thanks, man. See you soon. Bye. Bye.